dia tekan wheel. Room 2, where this afternoon we will be hearing from esteemed panelists on a wide range of cool topics via Track 2, focusing on Malaysia digital tech enablers. I'm Shani Iman Lee, and as your host for this session, I hope you've had a productive time with us so far on day 1 of Malaysia Digital Week. Coming up, we'll be conducting panel sessions 2, 4, and 6 in this room, focusing on drone tech, Malaysia's data readiness, and the Web3 ecosystem. But first up, let's not waste any time and dive right into our first panel session for Track 2. Now, it's no surprise the Malaysian government wants to tap into the huge potential of unmanned aircraft systems, or UAS, and make this part of the national agenda. To do this, they've developed a blueprint aimed at supporting the entire drone industry ecosystem, dubbed the Malaysia Drones Technology Action Plan 2022 to 2030, or MDTAP 30. What does this mean for Malaysia? Well, the drone industry is estimated to generate close to 51 billion ringgit towards the country's GDP by 2030. That's just 8 years from now, and simultaneously create 100,000 new jobs. Our next session will delve into how Malaysia can benefit and soar high through various drone tech innovations. But before that, please do take note of our Slido QR code for any questions you have regarding the session. And we certainly hope you have questions, because this is a very interesting topic and will definitely generate a lot of benefit for our economy. And now I'd like to invite on stage our moderator for this session, Navin Sinatambi, Head of Digital AG Tech, Sectorial Projects and Drone Tech at MDEC. A quick introduction. At MDEC, Navin oversees disruptive technologies such as IoT, big data analytics, and artificial intelligence, while leading one of the key national initiatives under the Industry Development Pillar. Over to you, Navin.
So, very good afternoon. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
So, quick question. How many of you all have not had lunch yet? Hands up. How many of you all had lunch? Hands up. It's okay, you all are awake. Great. For those who have not taken your lunch, we offer you free great lunch. Have your lunch later, yeah? So on behalf of the Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation, MDEC, really pleased to have all of you here for a very interesting session. It's called drone technology, right? So before further ado, let me introduce esteemed panel members. You can see from the looks of their faces, they're all ready to answer great questions. So first on, let's invite Captain Sudhir from Cambrian Networks. A clap for the gentleman, because the beard actually explains the years of experience, right? Next, we have Captain Lee from Meraki. I would love to address all of them as captains, because these are the drone tech captains of the airways. And last but not least, we have Captain Shafiq from Asia Drone Technologies. So there's always a say, call yourself something and you become that person. So call ourselves captain, and alhamdulillah, we will become captain soon, right? Thank you so much. Again, ladies and gentlemen, really nice to have all of you here. But if you look around you, there is very little crowd. Do you know why? Great, I had some answers, but reality on the ground is most of the people around the world do not understand on the great opportunities created by drone technology. Most people perceive drone technology as a hobbyist, or probably some rich guy's son given a lot of money to do something, he bought drones, he started spraying, right? But drone these days became so much wider beyond your imagination. Drones transport medicines. Drones do not just spray, they do mapping. They do image quality of harvesting. Drones pick names of rent or kill. They use drones, right? Pharma Niaga, Air Asia, or Capital A rather now, they use drones. Drones actually reduce the dependency on manpower, yeah, with great effectiveness and real-time data. Now, getting into drone is nice, but there are tons of challenges faced by the drones experts here. So let me start with the last candidate on the screen, Encik Shafiq from Asia Drone Technology. As a established drone company in Malaysia now, what were your challenges and what are your challenges?
Okay, very good afternoon. So my company is Asia Drone IT Technologies. We were established in 2018. So we really focus on the talent development. In 2018, there was no one, or maybe less people actually look into talent development. Now Malaysia want to push forward into drone tech or any other kind of like technologies. But when people ask, okay, we want to invest into, in Malaysia, so where's the talent that can support that initiative? So this is where that we really go deep down to the talent development, where we actually took a step to train people. In the initial, we actually train people in just flying a drone. At that particular moment, like what Mr. Navin mentioned, people thought of like, okay, just flying drone to take photos and videos. And then eventually, this is where that we learn from people out there, from the industry out there, that hey, we need to use drone to take photos of construction. We need to take photos of the plantation, to do the tree counting, to do about topography and so forth. So from there we actually evolve and do more training on the application base. For example, in the agriculture sector, in the construction sector, and other kind of sector. So moving forward, I think some of the challenges that we are currently facing is actually on the expert who are really, have experience in the industry, not only just controlling drone, to fly a drone to take some photos and videos, but we also need someone that can interpret the data correctly. For example, we do some project with TNB, and then this where that we learn that from TNB point of sight, they need someone who can read on the thermal imaging. So they need someone who have thermographer certification. So, and this actually goes across to the other vertical as well. So I believe that's answered the question.
Thank you so much. He mentioned about talent. Now, do you all know how much a drone pilot can actually pay? Up to 2,000 ringgit, yeah, a drone pilot, and even more based on your experiences. So that's how lucrative the industry is. Again, COVID happened, a lot of us faced challenges, some of us lost jobs and all that. So typically you go like, let's do Food Panda or Grab delivery. But compared to that, a drone pilot actually earns far, far more, right? With talent, it comes great lucrative packages too. Now, Mr. Lee, a very familiar name, if those who have seen newspapers during the COVID pandemic, there was a project done with Capital A or AirAsia for drone delivery. Mr. Lee from Meraki, what are the challenges for you to reach this stage?
Thank you, Mr. Navi.
We wish you can have a drone to fly in the mic, boss.
Thank you, Mr. Navid. Thanks all. I'm Lee Meraki. Nama sebenar Razali, but nama famousnya Lee je. Okay, so let's not dwell too much. But before even we go towards the challenges, I would like to highlight where we are today. When we started in 2018, we had like three to five people, all right, in the company. All right, we were facilities management company, all right, and then we moved into digital in 2019. This gentleman right here is my Sifu. He was the one who trained the team, who trained us, and today we are number 19 drone company in the world, all right. So kudos to him, not to me. Okay, so I think with proper training, with proper diligence, with proper motivation factors, I think we are all able to achieve where we are today. Now, going into the challenges, I think there were huge challenges. To give you some light, when we were in facilities management, the challenges that we took is we need more manpower because we have our civil engineers to climb all the buildings, and it takes months. It takes months to get the full report, all right, to submit to the building management, to submit to JKR and the local authorities. Then we started with drone, all right. In 2019, we started with drone. So we did for most of the large organizations, such as construction company developers, such as Masing, MRCB, and few others, to name a few. All right. Then after that, bang, 2020, All right, Muhyiddin came up with this announcement: stay at home. All right, that was the killing moment. All right, but you see what we did was what we did was at that point of time we didn't know what to do. Okay. And I rented a house, okay? I rented a house, okay, a condo, all right? And I put the team in that particular house, okay? For me, it's a good luck house, because from there, the R&D team managed to come out with a drone after a year, all right? And from that one drone, it's not a normal drone, yeah? It's a hybrid drone. So we are the only one in the country that currently having this hybrid drone. All right. So to give you a comparison, a battery drone can fly for 8 minutes. Our drone can fly for 1 hour or even 2 hours. Okay. So that's the comparison. So we came out with that level of technology within the 3 or 4 people that we had at that point of time, and from there, when the COVID ends, and so we started going into the plantation, and today we have 50 over fleets which we have done during that period of time, 50 over, all right? We have 127 pilots from 3 people in 2019. Today we have 127 pilots, all right? Not to name the engineers, the R&Ds, etc. So I think the whole entire thing, the challenges was huge, all right? But because we were passionate enough, all right, we were drilling towards it, we know that we want to do it, we did it, and today we have achieved. And what is going to happen next is we are looking at 300 pilots by year end. That's our number. All right? Thank you.
We can clap for him. He just mentioned great stuff. So top 20 drone companies in the world actually come from Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, world's #1 drone companies also from Malaysia called Aerodyne, right? For those who don't know. And many in the top 20 are actually from Malaysia, and you are looking at some of them in the front. So drone market in Malaysia is really, really big. We are there. So dulunya kita kata world's largest glove manufacturer is in Malaysia, Top Glove, proud. Now we're also proud because top 20 glove or drone technology companies are actually from Malaysia. Again, you can clap for the gentleman, right? From a 3-man team to a 127 people team, and he has not tell, for those who are looking for a job, he's hiring. Yeah, he is hiring, right? Betul? Betul? Okay, Amin. Right, next, last on the street, we have Captain Sudhir, and this is a real captain, okay? I'm not saying this is a real captain. So don't play with the captain, Captain Sudhir from Combined Networks. You can clap for him too.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, so continuing on from the challenges portion of it, from the Cambian network, we started off, we are basically aviation guys, right? So we come from that background. But in 2017, something happened to our aviation operations. Normally, helicopter operations annually will get about 500 hours or so. And then in 2017, well, I'm talking about 500 hours operational flying in a commercial environment. 2017, we had 50 hours per year. And that made us realize that something has changed. The aviation world has changed. Because we used to do all those works that today the drones do, the aerial survey, the mapping, the plantation, whatever that they need to do, even the construction. We used to construct towers, etc., kind of stuff. You name it, everything to do with aerial works, it was the helicopter. But in 2017, reality hit us that it's either we beat these guys down and don't let them live, or we adopt them. So the whole thing here is that we look at challenges as opportunities. That's our concept. If there's a challenge, there's an opportunity. So from that, the innovativeness of the organization came into play. We looked at Malaysia as a whole and asked ourselves, if we were to deploy such high-tech technology, this is spacecraft technology. Yeah, you might look at it like what Naveen said just now. His grandmother calls it hobby toys and all that kind of stuff. But it is space-age technology, maturing in front of our eyes. So if we were to deploy this in a commercial environment, Safety of everybody around is going to be of a great concern. So how do we manage that expectation? It cannot come from a hobbyist, that's for sure. Because for hobby, you are safe as long as you fly in front of you. But commercial operations mean going beyond that boundaries of visual flying and all that. So that's where we said that's a challenge, but we will take it head on and see how far we can go. But then the investment required was tremendous, you know, because we're a Malaysian company. We never were innovators or creators of such technologies. We were always users of those technologies. So it was a challenge to find that kind of talent, number one. Not to say people are not smart, but that industry that sustains those talents are not available. So how do we do it? It's either we go and purchase this technology from overseas and try to bring it over, which is also another expensive lesson. We have done that many times and failed. Then the other one would be to, okay, let's get into it, you know. It's all in or nothing. So that's the challenge that we faced at that time. And we would like to say that we successfully managed to create an environment, not only an environment, a platform that is autonomous, that will be able to enable any technopreneur out there who wants to use his, we don't call drones as just drones, we call them drobots, you know, a drone that can actually maneuver itself autonomously and do work in the field. And that's where we are today for the Cambian network. Now, the other thing I would like to say also is when we deployed this technology out in the field, we had to seek an industry that was large enough where the economy of scale can make it cost effective for everyone. So when we looked around, lo and behold, what the statistics were telling us was not true. The Malaysian statistics always put the oil and gas industry as the star of our, you know, economic income group. But that was not true. What we found out that the single largest industry in Malaysia is the oil palm or palm oil industry, if you want to call it, the agriculture industry. That's the single largest industry in Malaysia. If you just take that part of agriculture, palm oil alone, if you ask yourself honestly, how many people, how many Malaysians are involved in this, in the total supply chain, not just the laborers who work in the plantation, those you can say, oh, they are foreigners, majority of them, but the total supply chain in palm oil industry, it will surprise you. I know many people will not agree with me, but let me tell you, this is the truth. 8 million Malaysians. That's the number. Because don't forget, palm oil is in everything that we touch today. From the coffee you drink at Starbucks, to the perfumes that you use, to the pharmaceuticals, to the makeup, to the food that you eat and you bake, the pasta that you love, everything, right? So how can it be that we are not doing something for a homegrown industry like this? And that's where we said, no, we will go all in, we'll do something for this. Because if this industry collapses because of the labor shortage, the whole Malaysian economy will collapse. I'm not a doomsday guy, I'm a very optimistic guy, but that is the reality that we all have to understand. And that is why we focused on this. It's not because as a technology company that we are so engrossed with palm oil or we want to fight the lobbyists in the US and all that. Nothing like that. It just makes economic sense for the nation. And that's where we are today. Sorry.
Thank you so much. So you mentioned two very important things. Number one, most sectors are very manual based, means operations wise, yeah. Number two, how can you use drones to make it from manual to real-time basis? Now, question to the crowd. When you talk about drones, I'm quite sure you bought your kids some drones for 100 ringgit, Lazada, 10 sale came. Who didn't? Good sales, by the way. Right. Question is, in your mind, what do you think drone can do? Spraying, masa kahwin, ambil gambar, taking photo, drones fly, and they call it, wow, drones flying. Malaysians, we tend to get fascinated with small things, yeah? Wow, drone, wo gempaknya, right? But that's reality, that's perceptions. But right now, today, drones can do far more than that. Imaging. For those who drive along the highway, since there's no lockdown anymore, when you drive in the highway, left and right, you will actually see oil palm plantations. Pernah tengok tak? Pernah ke tak? Tak dengar suara lah. Bagi makan tadi kot. Okay, dengar suara gelak sikit. Now, for you to visualize, a palm oil plantation on average is 5-acre land area and above to hundreds of acre of land. How many workers do you now manually need in 1-acre land? 5 workers. To spray, to harvest, to look at collection and all that. Right now with drones, we are not saying we want to remove the 5. No. We are just going to upskill and reskill these 5 to be drone operators to monitor the harvest. Now, do you all know in one palm oil tree, how many buah, how many biji tak? Who answers this get a free drone from Meraki? And I'm not kidding, boss. Correct, right? Who answers it right? Again, let me repeat. In one palm oil tree, how many buah are there on average? Berapa biji buah? 80. Ya Allah. Oh, banyaknya. Ni palm dusu kat mana ni? That's Malaysia productivity already. Okay, but reality is from 5 to 10, right? 5 to 10. Now, let's say a tree has only 3 biji buah. In your mind, tak subur lah. But wrong. If the pokok has only 3 biji, that means the pokok has disease. Who detects that? Right now, manual people, human. But will they see, calculate 3? Nah. Oh, ada. In Malaysia, what we do? Ada buah, tak ada buah. That's the question. But drones, ladies and gentlemen, can do fruit counting. If let's say a tree produces less than 5 fruits, the owner needs to cut the tree and eliminate it, else the disease will spread. Drones can do that. Number 2, let's say someone of us, my boss, Dr. Carl, is there. Let's say Dr. Carl has about 10 acres of land. We do pineapple project. What drones can also do is to tell Dr. Carl, mapping in sense of which area of the land is good to produce, which is categorized under green zone. Brown zone means not so. And then you have the red zone, which needs a lot of fertigation and irrigation. Right now what we do, the moment we tanam tak jadi, tambah budget. But ladies and gentlemen, that's not going to work. You tambah, you're topping up on the top of a dry land. But drones can tell us that with real-time data. So I can know which area, what plant to plant, and where to plant, how much to produce. Drones can do that. So I spoke about a lot, right? So now comes the next question. Were there a lot of use cases tak in Malaysia ni? A lot, ladies and gentlemen, of use cases. But rather than me talking about drone tech use cases, I would like colleagues to talk about it. Encik Shafiq, you want to go about drone tech use cases from Asia Drone?
I believe these 2 gentlemen will talk a lot more about the plantation, but let me give a bit of use cases. The first one that I already mentioned earlier in my point would be on the power line inspection, where the conventional method of doing it, basically the people, the technician, the maintenance have to climb up, and is a lot of hazard there, safety hazard. Not only that you actually hazard with the high electrical power line there, but also in terms of height and whatnot. So this is where that when we deploy test. Okay, got. So when we deploy drone to do the inspection, so there are certain criteria, certain requirement that needed by the TNB. So for example, they want to look into whether is there any defect in terms of rust, missing component. Sometimes when you see at the pylon, you see oh tak ada apa rosak, it's okay. But when you look into the high resolution image, this is where you're going to see rust, missing arcing horn, those maybe the burn component because of the lightning strike, and in fact even there are some illegal plantation happening below of the power line. Some of the illegal plantation or resident house there. So these are the things that TMB would like us to identify, and the way that how you're going to do it is by using drone. And then the second use cases that I can share with you guys will be on the road monitoring. So I would like to say this: drone is not a silver bullet or kind of like one-stop solution for everything. It has to be complement. It has to be supported with the other technology as well. For example, AI, IoT, and so forth. And when it comes to the road monitoring, I believe in last year, Selangor government actually mentioned they're going to use drone and other type of devices to actually monitor on the road monitoring. So how they actually doing that? So to give you the overview of it, basically the images and the video captured by drone, and also the camera mounted on the vehicle by the maintenance guy, let's say with the 4x4 Hilux or whatnot. So this video will be fed directly to the control station, where it will start automatically analyze the possibility. Is there any pothole? Is there any water pond there or whatnot? So obviously in the first stage, I've seen that before. The first stage of analyzing it, we will take sometimes for the computer, for the AI to understand whether is it actually the correct or incorrect images. But eventually, I believe in the next 1 or 2 years, when the library become more matured and drone can fly much more further, this is where that your road, hopefully, in Malaysia will become much better in terms of detection, not in terms of repairing, because repairing is not out of like drone zone. So yeah, I believe these two use cases in terms of infrastructure will be, can be useful to you guys. Yep.
Thank you so much. Mr. Lee was about to reach out and say, I got so much more to say. Mr. Lee, over to you.
Two scenarios. This is real scenarios. You can see this in the newspapers. Number one, what we had last year, similar to what is currently happening, is the flood. Okay, this is real scenario. Okay, so we are working with Pharmaniaga, the largest pharmaceutical in Malaysia. What is happening is we are delivering. So what happened last year was, this is part of Sungai Muda and Shah Alam area, if you guys know. All right, it was a disaster. Okay, no one can go in. All right, and no one can come out. All right, at that point of time, I can tell you, when we see some of the image, because there was no network, so the communication was out. No one can speak to one another, you know. So what we did at that point of time, proactively work with Pharmaniaga to send medicines. All right. So of course we know that the large drones can only carry about 5 to 6 kg, but we have like several drones carrying all the way up and down, all right, and that makes a huge, it helped during that time of period, because no one can go out and no one can come in. That's number one. So because of that, you can see some of the little kids, right, during the flood, they had this spot on their hand, and you know, some disease because of the flood and all those, you know. So without that immediate attention, or without the real medicine that we are going to send to them, I think it will become much more worsen the situation. So that was one thing, all right, so which we did. And currently we are looking into rolling out this thing. Perhaps, I think within the next couple of weeks, we are already ready with Pharmaniaga to look into areas that will have similar situation. And we are also working with Bomba and other local authorities on this. So this is happening. So when you said that drone delivery, all right, this is happening, all right, in Malaysia. Okay, so I think because of that, you can see the government is already looking into this seriously, all right, by giving us proper permits, application to fly, and so forth. So because of that, I think this is going to make a huge, all right, on the logistics and infrastructure for us to gain more. Number two, I would like to mention this very clearly. When a rigger, do you know what's rigger? Rigger is a person who climbs the tower. Okay, I'm going to give you a very simple scenario. One rigger, all right, one person or two person who wants to climb the tower, if they want to do some inspection, they will require at least 4 to 5 hours to climb, to take pictures, all right, and to come down to do a report, 4 hours. So per day, you can only take 2 towers, all right. Currently, we are working with Axiata. We have been awarded Axiata. We are in 8 countries. Apart from Malaysia, we are in Indonesia, Nepal, Philippines, etc. So our team, all right, by using that drone, all right, we can take within 30 minutes. Just imagine how many towers that we can do within a day. All right, so we are looking at 5 to 6 towers versus 2 towers up to 8 towers. So that's the ratio that we are looking at. Why is it so important? Because everyone uses this as a main communication. If this is down, just imagine you cannot connect to your family, you cannot connect to your friends. All right, it's a disaster. Because of that, all right, so it's very optimal, or it's very important for us to have a proper maintenance and report of the tower. All right, so these are the 2 cases. Use cases that we had recently that we want to share along. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lee. I think that was very interesting because now he mentioned about 8 pillars, kan? Just to add on, when you guys drive, you see all these long electricity poles along the highway, right? So let's say something's wrong on the pole, rosak ke, karat ke, or there's some repair work done. It takes about 4 hours, but that's a side, yeah? What also happens is by the time, let's say if I'm a worker, my physical size, I go up, not 4 hours, probably 6 hours, right, size, yeah? So 6 hours, I climb down. By the time I do the report in the next 3 hours, there are other problems on the pole already because it's too late, right? So drones can do that for you real time. You don't need someone up there. Drones fly, feed you real-time data through connection networks, and you get that real time. And then you can tell which worker goes to which pillar rather than going one by one by one. There are millions of pillars, but that's just on the pillar story. And that's where Captain goes like, Naveen, you have not asked my use cases yet. Captain, over to you, Captain.
All right, thanks, Naveen. Now, I'm really impressed that my 2 co-panelists who are younger than me have actually talked about reality as is today. Now, I would like to take you all something slightly beyond, because you're a bit older, kan? So have to be a bit more imaginative. I would have expected them to be that, but the vision that we see. Today, not many people realize that we live very closely with artificial intelligence. It's just that it has not come out and grabbed us yet only. Because in 2015, when AlphaGo bit the human, we knew game over already. Everything that you think manually going to be done by humans is going to be artificial intelligence. That's the reality. And when it's going to happen only, it's not whether it will happen, it's when, just when. So to prepare for that, there are a lot of business opportunities. Seriously. So I'm sure my co-panelists will agree. What we are talking today as reality, on-ground solutions, etc., you will never see humans doing those jobs anymore in the next 5 years. For example, climbing a pole, harvesting the palm oil, doing the dirty, dull, dangerous, difficult jobs. You won't see them anymore there. So there will not be a need for humans to actually expose themselves in this kind of thing. And there comes the question then, if all these manual, tough jobs are all taken over by robots or whatever that we want to call them at that particular time, what will humans do? Right? And that's where the challenge is actually. And that is also another opportunity for every one of us. Then we become really creative. We become the problem solvers and the creators of probably the next generation technologies then. Because AI will definitely run your day-to-day job. That's for sure. Right? So these are the opportunities that we have in this realm. So yes, it's a drone industry, but the drone is an intelligent machine. It's becoming more and more intelligent, just like what Saiful was saying just now, that, you know, when you put a sensor on it, it becomes a tool. When you put big data on it, it becomes an analyst. Your data scientist all is going to go out of job already, right? And just like what Razali was saying just now, if it takes, you know, or Naveen was saying just now, that if it takes 3 hours for a man, probably it takes 3 minutes for the machine to do that job. So you get more and more complex machines out, working with you or working against you. It's your perception, but we would like to say it's an opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you so much. No, they've been speaking a lot. You can clap, lah. Come on. And these are very, very informative things that you don't read or hear. These are real use cases. Malaysians, we always believe in, I see, then I believe. Now I'm telling you, you hear, you believe. And Captain kept asking, when? That's a very important question, because before pandemic you say, hey boss, when you want to use drone? Your question is, you see first lah, let other people do, then we follow, right? Again, it's not wrong. But now, the question is not what do you want to use the drone for, question is when do you want to use the drone, because drones can do everything you want them, even beyond your imagination, right? So last time question is, technology partners will say, okay, you tell me what do you want. I will cater my service based on that. Now the question is, what you want? Because drones can do everything that you could ever think of, right? And these are very proud to say, local Malaysian drone companies, right? Again, a clap for that. We talk about Belilah Barangan Buatan Malaysia, drone Buatan Malaysia, or integrated in Malaysia. So that's excellent. We have great talents, we have great technology companies, and yes. Now for us at MDEC, we have My Drone Tech ecosystem. We do a lot of ecosystem engagements. I know it's a broad word, but let me summarize that. We do a lot of projects to validate whether the solution is feasible, to validate whether the solution is scalable, and then we work with technology partners so that many other individuals, organizations, associations out there can adopt these technologies. So far, we're also proud to say that we have about 10 drone tech pilot projects in collaboration with SME Corp, Charm, Meranti, Mosti, KCOM, and many other agencies, right? Is 10 enough? Not at all. We welcome more. So for those of you who are demand or even a drone company, come and talk to us. Come and talk to me. That's why we actually removed our masks, so you can see the full face. Yeah? Okay, on that note said, drone. So, question to you, Encik Shafiq. What is your hope for drone, specifically for Asia drone, in the next, I'm not going to say the typical 10 years, in the next 2 years? Over to you.
Right. On behalf of Asia Drone and also on the drone community itself, I would say that my hope to the industry would be like there will be more people come into the industry, because we see there are a lot of like gap to be filled, and we not only require some guy to just flying a drone and then not simply like Razali give a drone, hey, can you fly this drone? Yeah, I can fly. But we need someone that beyond that, meaning who can manage the whole fleet from A to Z, meaning that we give you a drone, you can manage from the pre-flight itself until the post-flight, and then also doing the maintenance and repair. Now, these are about the hardware part. We have also, we require also talent to fill in terms of on the software part. We have a lot of like data to be analyzed. Currently, now we just taking photos and then we took for granted, we just store in our database, data not being analyzed, video not being analyzed. But moving forward, these are the things that we need talents actually, a lot of in terms of analyzing the data and then moving towards on the AI. So otherwise the data will be underutilized. And some of my partners, when they started off in the drone tech, now currently they are not doing any more on the drone. Because like what Captain Suda has mentioned, drone is just a platform, just a tool for you to collect a data. So now they are moving towards on the data-driven companies. So moving forward, I hope in terms of from Asia Drone itself, we want to be, we want to grow more in terms of the talent development, not just training Malaysian, but also on the international basis, not only in the drone piloting, drone operation, but also more on the application wise. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. To add on a little bit, Asia Drone is one of the largest and most established accredited drone training providers in Malaysia. For those who want to become a drone pilot, who wants to learn about courses on drone, that's your go-to person. But marketing skill. Because why? Most of the challenge is that we don't know what we have in Malaysia. We have everything, right? Mr. Lee, over to you, 2 minutes.
Thank you. I think I'll make it very quick. First thing, I think from hardware, what we have done before, digital transformation is the thing that we want to look into. Okay, so the software part, the AI part, as mentioned by our colleagues just now, and also looking into what does this transform to the next level. So digital transformation is something that is a big word. It's a big word. All right, but what are the indicators inside to make it better? So that's our inspiration. I'll give you an example of what we had before. Remember just now I mentioned about 2019 that we started with. So you see, the talent that we had, all right, it's very important. I really want to highlight this. You don't pick and choose. You don't pick and choose. Everyone is a talent. I'll give you an example. It's a true story. Real case scenario that we had. Our head engineer, all right, I'm not ashamed to tell, you can meet him later, all right. He is a mud rempit. Okay, you know illegal racer? Okay. So from there, all right, so we built our engine drones from that level up to what we have today. He was working in a mechanic shop, all right. We took him because of his talent, all right. He was in Pahang and Kelantan, so you know his dialects. He can't even speak English. Today, he's talking to Japan, he's talking to China, he's talking to US companies in English, and also providing knowledge to the new graduate students. That's how the talent works. So there's no bad talents, it's always good talents. It's how we make them a better talent. Thank you.
That actually makes me feel good because I think I'm a good talent too. So I'm kidding. But again, for Meraki, they are actively hiring to join their ecosystem. Please, for those who are interested, who are looking out for different opportunities in drone tech, you can approach Mr. Lee, Razali. Mr. Lee, so yeah. All right, Captain, over to you, Captain. Your aspiration for combined networks.
Okay, so as rightfully mentioned by the co-panelists, talent is a real, requirement for this industry. And we are also actively recruiting. We just put out our cadet pilots advertisement, and it will run every month. In fact, we are churning out 20. We have places for 20, sorry. And ours is a totally remotely processed autonomous field operation. That means it's the next step. It's the next natural evolution of this industry. And we are ready for that. We have already applied for all the permits, etc., to get it going to that level, which will be complementing all what our co-panelists do. This is beyond visual line of sight operation. That means we can actually operate below canopy for miles and miles. And then we can also go into tunnels, we can go anywhere. So as a technology company and consortium that we are, don't worry, we are not taking away jobs from anybody when we say technology is going to do work. We are actually creating jobs in the high-tech environment, high-paying income, meaning to say, for example, I'll just run with you. We pay 48,000 ringgit for one person for 12 months. That's how serious we are. But our expectations are high. You have to pass the course at 75% passing mark. But if you make it, your minimum income, although the base income as we call it is 2005, is already touching 5,000 plus. That's the level of income that a person will be making. Of course, that's not much if you compare to the US dollar sliding, Malaysian dollar sliding against the USD. But it's still a decent income for any Malaysian youngster who is of Form 5 education or what Lee said. Actually, we really do not look at your graduate certificate at all. to us is of no meaning. If you have the will, if you have the capability to read, write, and understand what you write, not like a doctor, okay, sorry if there are doctors in the house, but if you have that three things, that is read, to understand, write to explain, count to quantify, you can become this person that we want you to be. So that's the kind of aspiration that we have for the younger people in the nation. For the technology part of it, we would like to see the platform being used by as many people as possible, because it will really help. Now, just a little bit sidetrack here, although it's part of this. You see, for a farmer, if you ask him to take his land and go to the bank and ask for a loan, they will value it only at the agricultural value kind of thing, which probably will be maybe 50 cents a relong or 50 cents an acre or something like that, depending on which location you are. The bank will never look at what is on top of his land, or whether it's a produce is musangking or oil palm or paddy. They don't look at that. They only look at that natural value. But when we go there and do the digital transformation for the farmers, we can now predict how much money he can make in the next 5 years, and that is real value that we are talking about. That's the kind of digital transformation that we can do. So the aspiration for us is to roll out this platform of ours. We call it the Intelligent Digital Agriculture System, and be it as ubiquitous as possible so that anybody, anywhere can use it. And that's our aspiration.
Thank you so much. So again, Cambia Network is hiring. Look, you heard the numbers from him. Huh? It's about potential 5,000 ringgit and more. Everyone is a talent. On that said, there's time for two things now. The time for drone to fly is now. And the second time is time for questions.
We don't have any questions on Slido, but it's not too late to pop in a couple of questions. We have maybe 5 minutes left. For any questions you have on Slido, if you do not have the QR, we can quickly put the QR code up on the screen for you. But any questions, please submit them over Slido. We have only about 5 minutes left.
5,000 ringgit question. Going once? Any questions? Anyone? Please ask. If I were sitting in your place, I'll probably ask, what would be the cost to use drones? Just to add on that, for you to use a drone, you do not need to buy a drone anymore. Drones are available as a service by acre size, by the hour size, by the amount of data generated. It can be discussed. Yep. Questions? I'm giving you tips. Free drone models are available for sale too. Yeah, I think we have a question on the floor. Loud and clear, Chief. I would love to walk out, but then the distance is...
Okay, let's switch that QR code to Slido, or maybe you just want to yell out your question to save some time.
Wonderful. How much will it cost to use drone technology to do a project, say 1 acre to 2 acre land? Anyone?
Okay, so the biggest challenge would be to get it transformed into the digital portion of it. So we call it digitalization. Now, for us, I would not know about my friends here, but for us, our rates are at 200 ringgit per hectare. That's how we charge. So the bigger your hectare, the cheaper it is for you. But we do take into account that the fact that the farmers cannot afford it. So we can cut a deal with the farmers that they don't have to pay us for that upfront. When we make the produce happen and take it to the mill or take it to the market, and when they sell that produce, we will take a portion of it. So that way there is no capex or minimum capex, let's say. Minimum capex is all OPEX, and we take care of the OPEX. So he actually has got higher income using the technology, and he goes back and have a sound sleep. That's basically how it works.
Again, the point to note, the more hectares means it's not more expensive, it's cheaper, right? That's how the perception that we have always had is the bigger the land size, the more expensive it is. No, not for drones at least. Yeah, The more the land, the cheaper it is, because it's a one-time flight, right? Any more questions? Good question, gentlemen over there. Any more questions?
I believe there was one question on Slido. If we can just pull up that question one more time. Okay, it seems to have dropped off. Okay, Navin, I think that's about all the time we have for the
Cool.
session.
Thank you so much again. Now, on behalf of the Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation, MDEC, we cannot do this alone. An ecosystem is big. We need as many partners as possible. Drone Tech is here to stay. Drone Tech is here to take over the Malaysian Airways. Local Malaysian companies are more ready than ever. Thank you so much to Asia Drone Technologies, to Meraki, to Kumbia Networks. Thank you so very much. And with that said, drones fly high until we meet again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to Navin for chairing that session, and also to our panelists, Captain Sudhir, Muhammad Shafiq, and Encik Muhammad Razali. Thank you so much for all of your fantastic input. There were some questions that popped in just as you closed, but for anyone who asked those questions, all of our panelists are still here, so please feel free to dunk up them after the session and ask them privately. Are you okay with that? Excellent. All right, thank you. As Navin said, it's an ecosystem, so everyone needs to work together. So we really appreciate you supporting the work that they're doing. Thank you so much to Navin and our panelists. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have a QR code up here for you to share your feedback with us. We'd really appreciate hearing your thoughts on this session. In the meantime, let me just quickly summarize the session that we had just now. Obviously, for someone who knows very little about drone technology, this was a very interesting session for me. But what I picked up on this was that there is still very little awareness of the drone sector locally, despite the top 20 drone tech companies in the world being mostly Malaysian. Challenges in the sector include lack of manpower, such as difficulty finding experts or talents locally to collate and interpret data from the drones meaningfully, as well as for deploying drones on a wider scale. Now, plenty of high-paying jobs can be created with the 4Ds, or dirty, dull, dangerous, and difficult jobs being taken over by drones by upskilling laborers and technicians to become drone operators, including the imaging, mapping, and problem detection for the agricultural sector, highway maintenance, power line inspection, and even flood rescue and mitigation. And so the list goes on, really. The sky's the limit insofar as what drone technology can do for your business. Now, AI will change the game too. In use with drone technology, AI will open up plenty of business opportunities in the next 5 years, so talent in the sector will need to be groomed to take on the problem-solving aspects of the job. Many aerial jobs are now taken over from the aviation sector by drones, but the next step, deploying drones commercially on a more wide-scale basis, must be done with proper regulations and permits and the sufficient talent to fill in the gaps in software, data analysis, and drone fleet management. Needless to say, in a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen, the outlook for the drone tech sector is huge. So hop on now while you still can. All right. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, I think it can't be argued that data has now become the world's most valuable commodity. Any country that hopes to develop a progressive and inclusive society in this day and age will find it hard-pressed to do so without utilizing data. In this next session, our panelists will unpack the importance of data sharing and ways to responsibly foster a data sharing culture. Keyword here, responsibly. They'll also discuss whether Malaysia's policy framework is ready to propel us forward as a data-driven nation. Now, for any questions for this upcoming session, very quickly, please take note of the Slido QR code now. While you're listening to this session, just formulate your questions and put them straight into the Slido so that our moderator can ask those questions immediately after. All right? So we'll put up the Slido QR for questions. And now I'd like to invite on stage our moderator for this session, Insignor Dr. Carl Ng, Vice President at the Special Project Office of MDEC. Dr. Carl leads MDEC's efforts in building a thriving national data ecosystem that includes driving the impact of data technologies such as IoT, big data analytics, and artificial intelligence. He has been instrumental in developing the National Big Data Analytics Framework in 2014 and the development of the National Artificial Intelligence Framework while also chairing the National Data Sharing Policy Task Force. Ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause for our moderator, Dr. Carl Ng. The floor is now yours, Dr. Carl.
Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to, first of all, like to thank the organizer for inviting me to moderate this session for today. As what the MC has mentioned, today's topic focuses on data, right? So in today's world, data is becoming more and more important, and data drives the digital, the solutions and so forth. So it is important for us collectively to utilize our data for development of a more progressive and inclusive society. And this panel seeks to highlight the importance of data sharing and ways to foster a data sharing culture. This panel will also discuss whether the policy framework at the national level can be a key vehicle to drive Malaysia to be a data-driven nation. I would like to welcome a member of panelists up to the stage for today. First of all, I'd like to welcome Encik Husni Abdul Aziz, who is attached to the Policy and Strategic Planning Division of Ministry of Communication and Multimedia, Malaysia. A quick background of Encik Husni. He's currently at the Policy and Strategic Planning Division, and he has plays a lot of different roles in the ministry in his previous position, including Head of Communication Coordination, Command Center, Education and Training Director of Community Communications Department, Head of KPI Unit, and also an officer with a special function, Parliamentary and Ministerial Affairs to the Minister. Right, so Encik Husni has worked as a PTD officer since the year 2005, and he holds a master's degree from UKM in Strategic and Security Analysis. So welcome to the stage. The next panelist is Dr. Charlene. She's the CEO of TM R&D, which is the R&D arm of TM. And Dr. Charlene has a lot of experience in R&D, 21 years in the ICT industry. And her experience is very strong in commercialization, where she has commercialized 18 solutions and delivers 7 mission-critical systems from TM Group. So distinguished career in R&D. And lastly, we have Shariza Zakaria, which is the CEO of Big Data Works. Shariza holds a bachelor degree from UUM, and he has more than 20 years experience in ICT industry. He has done large projects in different ICT companies, and later he co-founded My Data Services and secured a 6 years concession from SSM under a PFI model. And he was instrumental in getting My Data SSM to be recognized by even the Malaysian Book of Records for the first implementation of digital certified true copy services in the government agency, right? So he has experience working with the government and making data available through a commercial model, right? So with that introduction, let me start the panel session for today. First of all, I would like the panelists to quickly introduce yourself in the area of data sharing, and perhaps share your experience in data sharing. Okay, Josni.
Thank you very much, Dr. Carl. Compared to the other two panelists, I'm perhaps the most junior in data sharing. But currently, I'm in charge of the data management unit of the policy division at the ministry, and we are tasked with championing data sharing policy for the country. In this regard, I would like to refer to the earlier sessions. Earlier this morning, we heard from Lord Vasey and also Pak Tom how important it is to have a very clear and consistent policy statement with regards to data sharing. For example, Lord Vasey mentioned that the second most important thing in digital economy is to have the right regulation in place. So, according to research by World Bank, somewhere back, which we use as the foundation for the development of our national data sharing policy, Malaysia is rated as an emulator country, and not a trailblazer like, say, the UK or Korea, but we are not also just a participant. We, according to the 7 criteria listed by the World Bank, we are quite okay, especially in the ASEAN region. If you look at the ecosystem, even Pak Tom mentioned that we always come short marketing ourselves, and that we are the the well-kept secret of the ASEAN region. So we have all the potential, and I think with the approved NDSP in April this year, this is also very significant, I think, because it demonstrates a long-term commitment of the government to promote cross-sectoral data sharing. We have had earliest government circular introduced by Mampu, for example, on open data in 2015. And very recently, also this year, the government data sharing circular, and also the data-driven government framework. But this is the next step. The country is now ready for the next step, which is to promote cross-sectoral data sharing. You know, not just to promote data sharing among government agencies, but also with the private sector and also NGO and the masses as a whole. So this is what we are doing now. It's a huge task. This is what we are embarking for the next few years.
Right, okay. Maybe I think I'll backtrack to just explain what's data sharing, right? So I think in simplest form, it's basically you share a data between an organization to another organization, or could be person to person, right? So in the area of data that can be shared, there's basically 3 different spectrum, right? So one, it's open data, which is publicly made available, where by organizations or individuals, where this data can be used and reused to serve a particular purpose, right? So, for example, in the UK, under Transfer of London, they make the data of transportation schedule open and available, right? By doing so, then the solution providers can take this data and incorporate this in their app. For example, if you want to go to a restaurant, you know what's the time of the next bus to go to that restaurant, right? So it creates a different value, right? So there's also a category of data where it's restricted by permission, right? So you have to get permission from the other party to share the data, right? So you have to sign a certain confidential agreement and so forth, right? So that is the second category of data, right? Of course, there's also data which is highly restricted, which is it could be company secret, it could be financial statement, etc. Right? So those are actually restricted to a certain access level, right? So this is basically difference of data sharing. So what we are trying to do from the national data sharing policy is to encourage people to share data safely within the framework of the law, as well as making sure that it's also complying with the security access level as well, right? So that's what we intend to do, right? So to give you more examples in terms of what is the industry is doing when it comes to data sharing, perhaps I'd like to invite Dr. Charlene, who has a lot of experience in driving data sharing within organizations, within TM Group, as well as other organizations. Right? Perhaps Dr. Charlene would like to share your experience.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Carl, for inviting me to this panel, and it's really a pleasure to be here. So TMR&D is the innovation arm of Telecom Malaysia, and we have been in business for the last 21 years. And over the last, what we have done differently over the last 6 years is also expand our reach to work not just with TM, but also for enterprises outside TM. And here is where we help bring digital solutions to help their businesses. So in fact, we have also expanded further to help businesses outside Malaysia. So we have exported like 6 solutions to 6 countries, the farthest being to South Africa. Our most popular product is the Smart Safety Helmet, where it's actually leveraging data that you get on the work site to provide a safer work environment for the people in the field. So back to Dr. Carl's point and question about the work that we have done nationally. This is a project that we have done with MDEC. This was during the COVID time, where we shared the use of TMR&D's own open innovation platform. That's a data sharing platform as part of the Data Technology Partner Initiative with, I think it was called COVID versus Digital. And it's about allowing researchers to share data. And this was, can you imagine the early stage of COVID when nobody understood what was going on, what was the key symptoms to look out for, what were the drivers of, of transmission and so on. And so we allowed this platform to be used globally. Researchers, government officials shared data, whatever they could. And researchers leverage on this data to provide insights, and insights to be shared back to their institutions, to their respective organizations. So it put in motion for people to see how, with just sharing open data, correlations can be made, and to help the businesses and the governments of the day. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Charlene. Going back to my earlier example on open data, right? So I mentioned that in London they actually made the data available through the Transport for London open data platform, right? In Malaysia as well, there's data.gov.my, which is the Malaysian open data platform, and it's run by Mampu, right? So far, I think there's thousands of data. Tens of thousands of data which is available at that portal, right? The issue is sometimes the data may not be useful for you because it's basically a series of different data sets, right? So the data is not customized to the researchers or solutions provider requirements, right? So but in Malaysia, there are also different organizations that are making the data available to the public through a platform, right? So here we have Shariza, who has been partnering with a government entity, which is SSM, to provide data services to the public and different organizations. Perhaps Shariza can provide certain insights in terms of your experience doing this and how organizations can benefit from this data sharing.
Okay. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Right. First of all, thank you for having me. I will just do justice to the organizer and moderator and MC. I'll be short and sweet. Okay. Otherwise, we'll be talking like in hours and hours, right? So this clock is ticking now, 25 minutes we have. Okay, so Big Data Works is a company which is given the rights to service the market by the government agency. So we actually supplies company registry data from Suruhanjaya Syarikat Malaysia, where the data contains information on corporate structure, compliance information, financial standings, and annual reports, which are consumed by credit rating agency, banks, financial services, professional bodies, and audit firms, just to name a few. So our service is also widely known as My Data SSM. This is a sole trustworthy data source that comes direct from SSM database registry. And this is on a PPP model, which stands for public-private partnership. So from our experience managing data on behalf of the government and government agency, we see there are a lot more data source that the public wants. And this is for the use of, for their businesses to do analytics, for them to do insights, for them to do projections and predictions, because today data is all about making informed decision. So we would like to see more participation from government agency to open up to private sector to come and collaborate together and give our value and give input to how we can make the data sharing experience more forward-looking. I'm happy to say that we have been invited by KCOM to be a representative for the private sector and become the National Data Sharing Policy Committee member. So we are allowed to give inputs on how we can do better in creating the policy for the benefit of the government nation. So that's all.
Okay, thank you, Shariza. Just for information, earlier on today morning, I think the Secretary General of Communication and Multimedia Ministry has shared that the Prime Minister have announced the National Data Sharing Policy, which has been approved by the Cabinet earlier this year, right? So the whole idea here is to provide the businesses and the public and also government sectors as to look into data sharing, and this is a reference point as basically serve as a guide to encourage people to look at data sharing, right? So the approach is more like a soft approach rather than a hard approach, where a lot of guidelines are given, a lot of hand-holding, trainings, and so forth, right? But the whole idea is within the next 2 to 3 years, the government wants to review this and to see whether or not there's a need to look into a data sharing act for the public sector, right? So that's the long-term vision of it, but we're starting the ball rolling to make sure that everyone understood the potential of data sharing and the regulations and how to do it safely as well, right? So that's the essence of it. And we have come a long way when it comes to data sharing. In Malaysia, currently there's 2 different act that looks at data sharing, right? So from a private sector standpoint, any data that's transacted commercially falls under the Personal Data Protection Act, right? So those related to the private sector. From government's perspective, it's basically the OSA, Official Secret Act, where it's governed under the information that classified and certain information required certain approval level, right, from the government standpoint. So that's the overall picture in terms of the data sharing landscape for Malaysia, right? Obviously, there's a lot of different challenges when it comes to data sharing. So from an earlier study, typically it falls into 3 categories. Either the person do not want to share because information is power, and therefore I just refuse to share, right? So that's one category. The second is I want to share, but the laws and regulation, it's not permitting for me to share. There's no guidelines and so forth, right? So that's second reason why people don't share. The third reason why people don't share, it's there's lack of resources and even technology that allows them to share, right? So sometimes you're not allowed to share details of the data, right? But if you can aggregate this data, you can anonymize this data, it can be shared. But they do not have the technology and know how to do this, right? So that's basically some of the reasons why people don't share the data, right? But going back to this question, I'm going to ask all the panelists, what sort of challenges that you face in the area of data sharing, right? You can summarize this quickly. 3 different challenges in data sharing.
Yeah.
Chusni?
Thank you very much. The call pretty much has summarized the whole issue. But just to point out several observations, looking at the government approach, as Dr. Carl mentioned earlier, initially the council, the Digital Economy Council, recommended that we draft, facilitate the drafting of the Omnibus Act for data sharing. But after negotiation, we opted for a more incremental approach. In that, we proceed with the implementation of the policy first, and then after 2 years, we will conduct an impact analysis and whether it's a requirement. But I think if you look at the scenario in developed countries, it's a must. Like say for Korea, they have their own Information Act, for example, not to say compel people to share, but to facilitate further, especially across sectors. But in terms of the public sector, I think we have to look at upskilling and capacity building at the lowest level, because we are talking about driving digitalization for the country. But what about the staff? Are they well trained in, let's say, data science, or at least the definition, or the basic dimensions. The earlier concern would be about sharing classified data, for example. I think with us coming up with this national data sharing policy, is a paradigm shift, ladies and gentlemen, in the sense that we are shifting towards an open-end approach. You can share data, but not the classified ones. Not to say upright, you can't share this because these are classified data. Previously, it was the mindset. Thirdly, I would have to point out the lack of focus in the departments, for example. We have to multitask most of the time. Government officers, they don't really have very specified focus areas. You have to drive the policy, you have to mingle around with you guys. You need to know the nitty-gritty technical details as well. Not to say to be an expert, but in order to drive and to move the policy, we have to engage them. So that's what we are doing now. We have under the NDSP 2 committees, and for the technical committee, we have representatives from the private sector, the academia, to give inputs on areas which needs to be further developed. For example, development of data sharing agreement format, for example, yeah, things like anonymization and monetization of data and how it could benefit government agencies as well as businesses, for example, yeah? And establishing a common platform where this could be done safely and avoiding data breach. You know, you need to also emphasize on security as well. So these are the things that we're looking into and should be more focused on.
Okay, a quick one, Dr. Charlene, challenges in data sharing?
Okay, Dr. Carl, I'll give you 3. Quickly, underlying IT infrastructure that is not built to scale, legacy source systems, and the third one is management's understanding of what it takes to actually drive data sharing as well as digital transformation.
Okay, thank you. We will elaborate more later. Perhaps, Shariza?
Okay, I have a quick one. One is data availability, because there's not a lot of data out there. And number 2 will be data format, because we have all sorts of data format. Imagine in banks, they are still using legacy data. And now the technology space, they're already into a lighter, a better language, better platform, which doesn't carry a lot of bytes and spaces. The last one will be communication. Communication on the awareness, communication between the industrial player, and communication between the stakeholder, which is government and private sector. So that's 3.
Okay, so the next question is the last question. Is basically, despite these challenges, do you think we are ready to be a data-driven nation? And if there's a policy, how would this policy at the national level be able to cultivate a data sharing ecosystem, right? So these questions, I will start with Shariza first.
All right. In my opinion, we are not ready yet. There's a lot of work to do. In fact, data operators and data users have been longing for government to open up their data sharing policy since last 10 years. Okay. But yes, with NDSP, better late than never, yeah. But yes, with NDSP, it will spur value creation instead of valuation, just like Pak Tommy said this morning, especially to B2B and B2C markets. And this will promote more application innovation, enrichment of public and private data, and eventually will shape the people towards data-driven nation. I think, yes, we will go there, but, and we will benefit from this data sharing policy.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Charlene?
Okay, first of all, congratulations to the Ministry and to MDEC for getting the National Data Policy approved at Cabinet. We are eagerly awaiting what it says in the policy document. But I am actually a great believer of allowing the market forces to dictate, and how to drive change, especially on data sharing policy. And this is especially for the enterprises, because I believe enterprises will instinctively know who to work with, what to do, and how to open up data, which data they want to open up, because it drives business value. So they will know this. Perhaps a policy is needed. Now there's already a policy, but retrospectively, policy is needed to unblock certain impediments, but not for monetization. And I think that's where I feel it should be market forces that decides how data is shared, how much, and so on. So totally believe that we need a policy to govern perhaps government data, because that belongs to the people in some sense, non-sensitive data. How can that be shared for businesses to leverage on and provide greater insights, better products? As a person working in innovation, that's all we look for, to be able to create better products, better insights, and for the business. Thank you.
Jayosni?
I think the feedback from our 2 earlier panelists are very positive. And we are positive about it. But we have to recognize the gap that we have, as it was noted by the two co-chairs of our implementation committee, the MDEC CEO and also our Deputy SecGen during our first meeting in August. We need to address both, the business community, the high-tech players, and also the needs of the masses, the people, the population. Because, I think, communication and awareness is very important. I think you all have friends who have been using Google Map throughout their lives to get to places, and yet if you do a survey, you ask them, are you engaged in data sharing? You will not get an emphatic yes. Yeah, because they don't really know what it means, and how they could benefit from data sharing. So we also need to address that. Yeah.
I think what's key here is use cases, right? So I think there's a lot of use cases around here, but we are not aware, right? So I think how many of you use Waze coming to this location this morning because of the jam, right? So Waze is a classic example of a data sharing, because by agreeing for using Waze data, you basically crowd sharing, right? Crowd share, right? Your location data, so that people can be informed in terms of number of traffics on the road, traffic jam, and so forth. Because your driving pattern, the speed of your vehicle are being tracked, right? And that data provides richness when it comes to predicting traffic jam and predicting the time taken for you to come from your home to this location, right? So that's one example, and Waze actually has this program where they allow government to tap on this data, and some governments have done a very good job. For example, the Selangor state government has used this data, Waze data, whenever you put in a pothole data into the road, and then someone agreed, that data basically goes back to the municipal council to repair that roads, right? So there's additional value added, right? Because of like Waze, they allow the community to access this data, then a lot more value can be created, right? So this is just one example, right, that you don't see, but it's already happening on the ground. Right. So I have 7 more minutes. Perhaps I can open the floor for any questions. I can open for 2 questions, perhaps. Anyone?
We have some questions for you on Slido, Dr. Carl.
All
We'll
right.
just put that up on the slide on the screen for you.
Okay. Regards to data sharing, is there any privacy issues for personal identifiable information data collected and shared, right? Perhaps, Doc, you want to answer this? PII.
So largely the work that I do revolves around open data. So data that is, I would say, not identified with a transaction or with a person. And if it is anonymized. So we have done systems for the frontliners for Telecom Malaysia, where when you call the call center, what you want to know is what's wrong with my line, or how can I get my service faster, and so on. So in that scenario, what we have done is pulled up all data from network, customer information, billing information, and so on. So you get a one-stop information drive from that. So those are some of the examples that we have done.
Yeah. So I think in this case, PII is basically by consent, right? So the PDPA, it's run by consent. So as long as there's consent given, and you're given the consent, the data can be shared to another party, right? So if you don't consent, you will not, right? For example, like given by Dr. Charlene earlier on, the contact center, when you call in, they basically ask you, right? Your details, and you consented to those by giving those things to receive a particular services, right? So the consent is basically given, right? So that in essence, it's based on PDPA. The second question is, when it comes to real-time data sharing, how far is Malaysia into discussing this matter, right? I think real-time data share?
I think, okay, I can answer that question. What we are doing in My Data SSM with our registry of company commission, we are actually supplying real-time data to the public. We are the gateway between the public and SSM, and there's no benefit to keep data because data keep on changing. So what we do is just whenever there's a query, we just go and get data real time from SSM. So that is the importance of having data from the trustworthy source. So I think if you want to replicate this model, data owners should be with those who has the authority. But you can allow the market to get the data, provided that you are given the access to use the data. So rightfully so that you pointed out, if you give a consent before you sign up to use the service, that means you are allowing people to take data and vice versa. And for information, public domain data, SSM is actually a public domain data. You can buy information on companies for the purpose of doing due diligence, but SSM cannot be selling personal data like where do they stay, their IC and whatever not. So there are things that you can supply, there are things you cannot, but it's just a matter of awareness and understanding of the right of use of data. I think that's the misconception.
Okay.
Can I
Yeah,
say
sure.
something? So I believe in real-time data, but it depends on use case. So a lot of the work that we do use real-time data, for example, network health, diagnostics, and so on. And there are certain cases where real-time data is not required, maybe near real-time. So not everything needs to be real-time. A lot of it would go back to the use case and the underlying infrastructure that you need. For example, if network data don't change so often, then every 15 minutes is good enough as a dipstick, and so on and so on. You know, but a lot of our work actually now near real-time data.
Okay, so I have about 3 more minutes left. So perhaps, I think before I close the session, let me just allow all the panelists to point out, your wish when it comes to data sharing. What is your aspiration would be for data sharing and how can we progress towards a data-driven nation? Shariza?
Okay, a quick one. I wish the government will allow more participation from public and private in data sharing initiative. Probably allow B2B to work close together to drive the whole initiative. And number 2, for the government to actually promote awareness, support the data stakeholder, which is data user, data owner, and data operator. And probably last one is to give protection of IP, and then the rights to use of data, and probably the last one to observe the competition between the players healthily.
Okay, Ms. Charlene?
My measure of success would be to launch the next unicorn for Malaysia, leveraging on the open data that that the government is allowing.
Okay, it's a tall order, but it's a good aspiration. Josni?
Yeah, representing the government, I would have to say that, okay, first of all, just to inform that we are going to have our first technical committee meeting next week. So we'll be looking into the details and you'll be invited. No worries. So we'll discuss the specific KPIs to be achieved, and we'll be open to discuss specific issues. But of course, in the long, I would not repeat the overused sentence that data is the new oil, But it's the reality now. You may have the most expensive car, but if you don't have fuel, it will not move anywhere, You may have the technology, You may have the talent, but without data and data exchange, it won't work to support the vision to become a fully digitalized nation. You know, for the long term, we'll be looking at promoting innovation and also economic growth in the digital economy, for example, from data exchange. But we must also look into the small steps, yeah, perhaps to increase the volume of data exchange between the public and private sector, for example, you know, promote the best practices and have an inventory of use cases. Because we have under our NDSP committee 22 over ministries, 6 key agencies under KCOM, and also representatives from the private sector. So yeah, I think we could better synergize to achieve our long-term objective in this regard.
Okay, so run out of time, 0.00. So let me just quickly summarize this in 30 seconds, right? So I think, are we ready to be a data-driven nation? Not yet. Obviously, there's a lot of work needs to be done in terms of capacity building, awareness, looking into PPP, between public-private partnership and so forth, so that we're able to increase data accessibility and the understanding of data. So use cases are key, right? So we need to build use cases for the benefit of rakyat and businesses, right? And if everyone works together as an ecosystem, all stakeholders works together, I believe that we can get there. And it's also the right time as well, because right now the government is committed into data sharing, and we have formed committees to look into this, the National Data Sharing Policy Implementation Committees. And we will be doing a lot of engagement, I'm sure, to look into taking small steps, guideline by guideline, and unlocking some of these challenges so that we're able to move further when it comes to make our nation to become data-driven. Right? With that, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Karl, and a big round of applause for Dr. Karl and our panelists, Dr. Charlene, Shariza, and Muhammad Husni. Thank you so much for all of your input and insights into that very interesting topic of discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, for any feedback on this session, please do take a picture of the QR code, head there and give us your feedback via the survey on Slido that we'll put up on the screen in just a little bit. Now, Dr. Karl did an excellent job of summarizing the session, but I have also been copiously taking notes during the session, so please do allow me to also add to the notes that I have been taking. Now, to enable a data-driven economy means encouraging people to share data safely within the framework of the law, while also complying with security access levels. Now, it's evident that with the rise in digitalization, companies require a lot more data sources for them to do analytics, insights, and projections. And the National Data Sharing Policy launched early this year is a guide on how to conduct data sharing responsibly and securely, but within the next 2 to 3 years, it may be reviewed on whether this policy will need to be formulated further into an act. So, is Malaysia ready? As Dr. Karl summarized, there is a lot of work to be done. So maybe not just yet, the gaps need to be recognized and more public-private partnerships need to be created. But the panelists are overall positive that it can be done. Dr. Charlene reckoned that market forces must be allowed to dictate what data needs to be shared, and more awareness needs to be created on data protection, plus the types and benefits of data sharing. The most important thing in a successful digital economy, as Shariza said, is to have the right regulations in place, and that restricted data needs to be more secure. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed that session. Another big round of applause, please, for our panelists. They did an excellent job of taking that issue apart and putting it back together. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here is the QR code for you to share your feedback with us on panel session 4, Is Malaysia Ready to be a Data-Driven Nation? Please do share your feedback with us, because that feedback is very important for us to be able to help curate more topics for you in future sessions of Malaysia Digital. All right, coming into our final track 2 session for this afternoon, we'll be focusing on Malaysia's Web3 ecosystem. What is it all about? Is it just a buzzword? And if not, how can we forge a meaningful path ahead with it? But before we get into that, ladies and gentlemen, please do take note. We'll put up the Slido QR code for you to have your questions ready, so that when we do have our Q&A session, you have those questions ready for our panelists. Web3 ecosystem. Maybe for a lot of us, this is a new word that we have yet to hear, while for some of you, it's something that you have been eagerly anticipating. So I'm really looking forward to this next session that we have for you, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, well. So 1, 2, okay, test, 1, 2, test, 1, 2.
All right, as we prepare our panelists and our moderator for this upcoming session, ladies and gentlemen, please do share your feedback via this QR code. We'd really love to hear what you think about our sessions earlier in panel 2, earlier on drone tech, and also on panel 4, is Malaysia ready to be a data-driven nation? We really appreciate your feedback and hearing what you have to say about our sessions today and on Malaysia Digital as a whole. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the QR code up on the screen for you. For any questions that you may have regarding Malaysia's Web3 ecosystem, please do send in your questions throughout the session, and we will bring up the questions for you as soon as the panel session is done. Now, ladies and gentlemen, for our next session, building the path ahead for Malaysia's Web3 ecosystem, I'd like to invite on stage our moderator for the session. Mohan Lau is the head of digital creative content at MDEC, where he helps drive the mission to develop the digital creative content industry in Malaysia. With over 15 years of experience in the digital content space, Mohan has a particular interest in leading teams across games development, games commercialization, and now ecosystem building, having launched over 30 games during the course of his career. So we have no one better to run this session than you, Mohan. So take it away in introducing our panelists. Over to you.
All right. Thank you, MC. Pretty honored today to have such a prestigious and original team of entrepreneurs and thought leaders in the Web3 space in Malaysia. Yeah. So I'm not going to do justice by introducing themselves. So I'm going to leverage and get them to do a quick, short, brief introduction about themselves.
Shall I start?
Yep.
Hi, my name is Ganesh Kumar Banga. I'm the executive chairman of NetCentric Limited. Serial tech entrepreneur myself. I was involved in payments in the year 2000. Started a company called MOL. And then from there, I went into social networking, acquired Friendster in 2010. From there, actually went to e-commerce, started an e-commerce ecosystem called Commerce.Asia, which I'm also the executive chairman of and founder, where today we have 92,000 merchants with a gross merchandise volume of 1.5 billion US last year. And about 2 years ago, I acquired a company called NetCentric, which I'm representing here today, that owns the largest influencer marketing platform in Malaysia, Nafneng. And just a couple of months ago, we started to expand into Web3, where we invested in a company called NFT Technologies and are creating an NFT technology platform to enable Malaysian creators and also global creators to issue utility NFTs with a good user experience as well, leveraging on distribution through our influencer network.
Hello everyone, my name is Effendi. I am the president and the founder of the Crypto Valley Malaysia Association. We are a non-profit tech movement where we gather the players, industry people in the cryptographic tech and blockchain. And also we do awareness, R&D with a lot of government agencies such as Cybersecurity Malaysia. And I'm also the CEO of Blockwork, where we do a lot of system integration on the blockchain, such as blockchain for certificates, security documents, halal supply blockchain, and of course now we also involved with a Web3 that focusing on the metaverse. where we are developing some sort of a metaverse university education, and I'm so happy to be here, and we will share a lot after this on Web3. Thank you.
Hi everyone, Jensen here. I'm more from the gaming side of blockchain, so probably the more fun stuff, I guess. Effectively, I'm from PathDAO, co-founder of PathDAO. What we do is we are builders in the gaming ecosystem, in the blockchain ecosystem. And one of our key, we do investments in a lot of blockchain games, but one of our key flagship products is effectively a social network for gamers, where we build a social network powered by blockchain, powered by NFTs, powered by currency, to build this whole new interaction between gamers and content creators. So yeah, that's about me.
Right.
Hi, my name is Matthew. I'm from Etherscan. So basically what we do is we build search engines for the blockchain to allow folks to look up information and just figure out what's happening on the blockchain. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Faz. I am the CEO of MX Global. We are a regulated or legal cryptocurrency exchange here in Malaysia. I also advise a layer 1 blockchain project called Zetrix, which most recently has partnered with MIMOS and the Malaysian government to create the Malaysian blockchain infrastructure. So we're the public chain partner for that, to kind of build cross-borders, real-world use cases.
Right. So I think some of these guys are super humble in a way they describe themselves. But anyway, let's explore, like, why Web3, right? Web3 is considered this upcoming technology that's going to be defining how businesses are going to be run in the future, and a lot of other use cases. But what are the best use cases, or why are we looking into Web3 in general, right? How does it help the general people? Perhaps, Ganesh, you could take this one first.
Sure, I think it's still the early days, to be honest, when it comes to Web3. If you look at the blockchain, a lot of the real applications for blockchain are still yet to be there, yet to be developed. I always give a analogy that if you look back at the year 2008, I believe, when Uber started, why was Uber actually created in the year 2008? Why wasn't it created in the year 2000? Why wasn't it created in the year 2020, for example? Because there was a technology that was enabled on the iPhone. It was a GPS technology. It was a notification technology. Notifications actually helped WhatsApp be created. If there was no notifications in your handphone, WhatsApp wouldn't be here today. If there was no GPS in your handphone, Uber wouldn't be here today. It's those technologies that actually enabled the real life applications to be created. Now today, if we look at blockchain, it is a technology there, and the applications are really fresh to be developed, right? And some of those applications, of course, are being developed today by, I think, not only the people on the stage, but people from all over the world. The biggest differentiation we have in Malaysia today compared to before when it comes to blockchain and Web3 is we're actually at the same level as everybody else. I've been starting to spend actually time in the Web3 space over the last 1 to 2 months and realized the number of real-world applications that are being created in Malaysia is amazing. And some of these applications are fresh, like there are no copycats. Like you're not copying like Grab copying Uber, right? You're not copying applications in the US. They're really creating fresh applications, new applications that actually can become global first. And I think therein lies the opportunity in Web3, is that we can create applications leveraging on this technology, blockchain, that's still fresh out of the gate. And with that, we can build global applications from here in Malaysia. One of the key usage of Web3, really, if you look at the entire industry, is actually the disruption of monopolies. The value of blockchain is you can easily disrupt monopolies very easily. I was having lunch last week at Token 2049, which was a blockchain event. A friend of mine invited me for lunch with this guy who just 1 year ago, 2 years ago, before the pandemic, was selling food in a gym in LA. Today he runs the biggest NFT conference in the world, NFT LA. And he's now developing an application to disrupt YouTube. So he's developing a platform where YouTubers or other content creators can really put up their videos on this platform, and consumers can go and look at those videos, and sponsors can also join this platform. And the money given by the sponsors, part of it goes to the consumers, and he wants to disrupt YouTube. Blockchain enables the next real disruption, and without blockchain, it's difficult to get that opportunity.
All right. Good.
Maybe I can touch a little bit on the layman perspective on what is actually Web 3.0, because a lot of a definition from scholars, academicians, industry players. Web 3 actually is an upcoming third generations of internet where websites and apps will be smart thinking like human to process data by using AI, machine learning, blockchain, and a lot of emerging tech. And this term of a Web3 coined by Dr. Gavin Wood. He's a co-founder of Ethereum, and then also the founder of Polkadot as well, and Parity programming language for Ethereum base. So by having this Web3 means that, if I can say it like this, Web 1.0 actually is for just the internet, right? Web 2.0 is a social internet, while Web 3.0 actually is a semantic web, where I think AI will be there, machine learning, and the best thing about Web 3 actually is about how we can control our data. Right? Before this, our data, if you use Facebook, Google will benefitize your data. So this thing. And second thing about the use cases, there are a lot of use cases. For example, metaverse now. In fact, Facebook also changed to the Meta, the name. And then next gen gaming, next gen dApps, virtual co-working place, virtual reality for land. For example, I'm part of the industry advisory panel for several universities to talk about how we can create our own solution on real estate, for example. So this thing actually, the value came because of these use cases. So what value actually from these use cases? It's about transaction. For me, metaverse is about transaction. Your kids, my kid actually play Roblox. I can say also Roblox is a part of the Web3 application, right? They buy Robux, always power my money, to buy the Robux, for example, right? So Decentraland, sandbox, you can have your own virtual land, you can transact it, you can transact. Now a lot of a movement that if you use metaverse, you do some transaction, you can have visibility in terms of your brand. Justin Bieber, for example, now having their own, he had his own branding in metaverse on metaverse concert. Like me, I'm working with Siti Nurhaliza to develop the first virtual and metaverse concert for her. So I think it's the things that we can apply in terms of use cases and also
Interesting.
Value for the Web3. Thank you.
Interesting. He wants a ticket to your online virtual concert. Does anybody else have any other thoughts on that?
Just a quick add on to what you said, right? I think one of the key words here is ownership, right? And I think one of the most exciting things that you can do when you own things, it's very different in a Web3 world where you actually own it versus a Web2 world where you don't really own it. They say you kind of own it, but in the end, it's actually controlled and it's actually owned by a centralized institution or force, right? One example, it could be social identities, right? And you hear all these things called NFTs, right? You see a picture of an ape, and you'd be like, why do people pay $100,000, right, for a picture like that? Okay, at a point, people are paying $400,000 for just a picture like that, right? I mean, the power behind that is because it's not just a picture. It's something that you can own, you can verify that you actually own it. And that's the only piece of picture, verifiable, that I actually own it. And because of that, suddenly it unlocks so many things. Two things that probably will excite people like you guys, right? It's one, it's social status, right? Because when I own something and I can prove the ownership of something, suddenly that value becomes so much more powerful. And the beauty about NFTs that we see today is like, today, I don't know how many of you guys wear Rolexes or your Patek Philippe, right? The idea is that, okay, cool, right? It brings up my social status. I actually own it. That's amazing. But the beauty around the world that we live in now, it's such a digital world. I can't really show my Rolex constantly on my Twitter. Can I post a bit of photo, try to flex my arm, right? But the beauty about NFT PFPs, for example, right? It's a photo that you know for sure is yours, and that becomes your identity, right? And that unlocks the entire whole social paradigm and societies and status. That's one. on the other hand of things is then, because you actually own these assets, you can actually do so much with it. One example is that you could financialize almost everything. An example, let's say I buy a ticket to, I don't know, you mentioned Siti Nurhaliza's concert, right? Yeah, Metaverse concert, right? And the ticket maybe costs, I don't know, 500 ringgit, 1,000 ringgit, okay? To a layman, that's a lot of money, right? But because I own this, let's say the ticket is an NFT ticket, right? And because this is it's so easy to prove that I own this ticket, I can easily pawn it, quote unquote, and I can maybe unlock 60% of its worth, 600 ringgit, in cash, right? And I can use this cash to feed my dog, water my plants, right? So you can do so much things. This is one example, right, of how financialization can affect normal goods that we typically just use on a daily basis, because these are truly owned by the user. Yeah, that's my extra 2 cents on that.
Got time or not? Got time.
Go, you can divert. We can let this be a casual conversation.
Super. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing I want to say is, I think when you mention Web3 to regular folks, right, it scares them away. No, it's like Web3. What is Web3? I would like to define it more as an extension of Web2 to address shortcomings of Web2. Having said that, I think the way I look at it, you break it down to 2 very large segments. So the first one is an enabler or means of transferring value. The second one being it's basically a distributed database where you can build stuff on top. So looking at it from this angle, right, we can see being applied to the existing verticals, the existing industry. You have gaming, right, for instance. So what we've seen, like very early use cases of gaming, is the points within games are being tokenized. So that adds more liquidity, adds more value to the gamers. Then you have verticals like Metaverse, right? So Metaverse, we've seen it already happening with people buying virtual lands that are basically NFTs, right? And then you have it with traditional finance. So obviously in finance, it's already being done. You have this thing called DeFi, decentralized finance, where you can take loans and just a variety of things that are being done then. And last but not least, I think as a general purpose platform, you're able to build what we call decentralized applications, like what has been mentioned earlier. So I think looking at this stuff, just kind of how I look at it, it's demystifying it. It's an extension of Web 2 to address shortcomings by providing these 2 things that I mentioned above. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so I totally agree with a lot what the panelists said. The way I kind of think about it is, right, like, whether you call it Web 3, Web 4, Web 5, I mean, I guess only Jack Dorsey wants to call it Web 5, right? It's, as some of the panelists have shared, right, it's to address the shortcomings of what we today experience as the internet. So if you go back in time and see how the internet was designed, it originally was, I think, a series called an ARPANET, right? So it dictated how computers speak to each other, essentially nodes talking to each other. In this generation of what we have is the internet, by design, it lacks 2 fundamental layers, right? Number one is an identity layer. That's why whoever you are on the internet, your kind of internet identity is your IP, but then there's nothing more than that. You can elect to have a Gmail address, but that's not the same as saying that that's really you. And the second is a financial layer, right? The internet was specifically designed not to handle financial transactions natively. And so what I believe we're seeing in the last, you could say 7 years, are iterations of people trying to solve these 2 key problems that didn't exist in the original internet, but could unlock a new generation of commerce through this revised, or what we call Web3 experience. So I think the jury is still out in terms of what will really constitute Web3 long term, but for sure a lot of what people have been experimenting with, whether it's PFPs around identity, whether it's kind of like your DeFi and financializing different tokenization of assets and all that, I think these are obvious things to address because we cannot really do it natively on the existing internet.
All right, so to summarize, Web3 is kind of building on Web2. It's an enhancement. It's disrupting the existing, Web2 spaces and creating new kind of apps, right? New kind of utilities, right? Cool. So I'm going to condense my questions, I think, because of time. So let's, we talked about building global applications, and do we have, do we have the right talent? Do we have the right infrastructure in place, right, to develop this? Are we ready to take on a global challenge in this space? Actually?
Okay, I think it's a very good question from Mohan. So we talk about talent. Talent is a very quite, it's quite challenging for us to develop such as this talent. Because why? Because we can say that most of the universities still outdated in terms of their modules on the IT. Blockchain is quite rare for the lecturers, even for the lecturers. So what we are lacking actually is in terms of education modules. So what we are doing right now from Crypto Valley Malaysia perspective, we develop a lot of modules for trainings. For example, we have our professional diploma in blockchain technology. So we are the first in Asia and in Malaysia creating this module approved by Senate of University, UMP, University Malaysia Pahang, and MSU, Malaysia Management and Science University, where now we have 120 students, 7 batches. But still not enough. The demands are there in terms of our development. So it's quite challenging. So we need to create talents. We need to be mainstream, create more awareness like this. And thank you to MDEC, and thank you for MDEC for this kind of session with legendary Mr. Ganesh, the founder of MOL, NAFNAC. We have Datuk Fazli, the CEO of Max Global, Etherscan, very famous overseas. In fact, so this kind of awareness movement need to be established, unite together, and with MDEC maybe we need to create more talents. I believe that we need to approach more universities and create the local talents because if not, we will have a brain drain.
Yeah.
Kind of
maybe Ganesh has something.
Yeah, I think the 3 things that we have to think about when it comes to talent and what you need to create talent. The first, I think, which is actually the most important, is exposure. Now, a lot of us who are early in the internet never got trained how to use the internet. When I first started to use the internet in the year 1995, nobody taught us how to connect a modem to a computer and dial in. At that time, the bulletin board service in Singapore, Jaring hadn't formed yet, or just about to be formed, right? Nobody trained us how to do it.
Remember the modem sounds, right?
Yeah, right. So, but we learned about it, we read about it, and so we had to create our own exposure at that time. Now today is very different. Everybody knows about crypto, everybody has heard about crypto, we all have the same exposure. Anybody born in the valley in San Francisco today or born here in Malaysia has the same exposure to new technology. So the world is now flat when it comes to exposure. So in that we have benefited, I would say. So exposure is the same. The second, of course, is formal training. Now we may not have the formal training to train blockchain developers. Yes, so I'm sure it's good to know that now we have that there are initiatives such as Crypto Valley Malaysia that's doing formal training. And I think that has to be promoted and encouraged. I think we do have a very proactive government in this country as well when it comes to technology. And of course, I think there need to be more public-private partnerships. MDEC and Crypto Valley Malaysia, of course. I know Dato' Faz is also partnered with MIMOS. So we need to have more public-private partnerships to promote that formal training that needs to be done. And the third, of course, is experience. So once you've got the exposure, once you've got the training, now what's key also is, which is most key actually, is experience. So that's why I think it's great that a lot of tech startups now, we've started to invest in tech startups as well in the space. And these tech startups can either hire these programmers, or for example, even we invest in some of these graduates, for example, and that will help create our first generation of startups. Just like we look back at 1995, the same time MOL and JobStreet and all were created, it's those guys that then created the people that later form FAVE and whatnot, right? So I think we are in the right direction. I think what's needed right now is that public-private partnerships to promote more training, more formal training maybe, to promote crypto and blockchain. So again, I think it's passed on to MDEC now to...
I think experience is it's hard to deal with. That's maybe I could probably talk to the most experienced person here on the panel, Etherscan, Mr. Matthew. Yeah, so you're one of the OGs in the space.
I feel really old. Yeah, so agree with what being said to one extent on that. So I think, at least on our end, right, I think the biggest impact that we can do is to inspire, is to prove to people you can build global companies out of Malaysia. And if you inspire that new generation, the younger folks coming to the ecosystem will have something to benchmark against. It's the same like what MOL and JobStreet did back in the days, right? So that is inspiring. So it's also inspiring people to build on Web3. And from the industry portion, I think if you look at Web3, right, so Web3 is not geographical. It's not limited by geography, right? So you build Web3, it's basically global, right? So keeping that in mind, with most of the Web3 stuff, it is not geographical, so meaning you compete on a global scale. So when you look at that, right, I think the other thing that you will probably run into is, when it comes, is a talent crunch. So I say talent crunch, not to say that we don't have the talent, but how do we retain the talent that we already have? So I think it makes sense to have a little bit more emphasis on that. How do you retain talent? How do you retain companies operating within Malaysia and stuff like that, looking towards the angle, yeah.
If I can add, right? So I mean, I'm operating a company that uses Malaysian talents, right? And two observations. First observation is, you actually got to start them young. So like, I think in Malaysia today, across every single university out there, correct me if I'm wrong, right? But there's only APU has a recognized blockchain society. Correct me if I'm wrong, okay? And I even have a friend who's trying to start some stuff in like Sunway or Monash, for example, right? They don't get the support internally, even just from even an interest group for blockchain, right? So I'm not sure where the support has to come from the government. Second observation around talent, right? So once these guys graduate, start working, or they become a blockchain capable dev, right? The problem that we're facing today is, you know, this whole work from home environment. It's actually very bad because Malaysia tech people are very cheap. That's the industry's best kept secret. And right, people like us, we are facing competition. My top guys are being poached by Silicon Valley people. And I have to just sell them a dream that, you know, it's not about the money, you know, it's about the vision, you know, and then maybe then you can keep them, right? But dude, I mean, if I go and give you an actual pay, like these guys are offering 4 times more than what I can pay them from an industry setting. So I'm not sure, again, how we're going to tackle that disparity in pay, especially working remotely is now a massive thing in the workforce.
Difficult to maintain our staff actually. They will go to another companies after they get the knowledge on this kind of emerging tech and blockchain.
Yeah, I think this issue is a standard issue across the entire tech industry, not just Web3, but the entire tech industry, especially during the pandemic, faced this. So it's actually a blessing that companies like Kasem and Shopee are retrenching people, because at least we can try to hire some of them.
Faz, you got anything to add?
No, I mean, I got comments on like Gen Z and work from home or work from office, but I think that's for a different panel.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think a few points. I think number one, I think the government is good at amplifying successes. So if there's already a success, then you can amplify that.
We should sell Matt.
Yeah. Like I said, I didn't know he was heading Interscan.
Mohan has known Matt for the better part of 2 decades, and only recently realized he's built a Web3 unicorn. So, you know, if it wasn't obvious to Matt's own neighborhood friend, I think we have to do a good job of telling the rest of the world. Interscan's based here.
Best kept secrets, huh? Yeah. So, I guess, you know, talent retention, I hear you on the global side. I think it's the same thing with even the games industry. We have a big growing games industry here. We are very competitive priced. So 2 things I think just drawing from that industry. Number one is the projects that you're working on. You need to inspire. Your project needs to be inspiring, I think. The people that they work with. So these are some of the things that they use. Of course, the culture. Because you, obviously, you know, working for a PlayStation versus working for a local company, right, is very different, right? The sexiness of it. Right, and you know, I recently there's an announcement of, you know, Mimos and together with MyEG on infrastructure, right, blockchain infrastructure. So how will this infrastructure support, the nation moving forward? How is it going to help out? What does it mean for the rest of the population, right? And the businesses in the country. So I'm probably going to start with Faz, since Dr. Faz, since he's...
Sure. Okay, I'm just trying to think really, really fast, like how do you answer this without tripping over anything? So, we totally acknowledge the fact that like a lot of what is now Web3 or, kind of stemmed out of blockchain, crypto movement, very much grassroots, totally decentralized movement, right? But we also acknowledge the fact that governments and businesses at large have the hardest time trying to incorporate those or participate within these systems. I think, as you can see with many crypto kind of or blockchain projects, it's very retail first. And at some point, maybe some institutions get involved. But so that's where we identify that the next wave, maybe not even the immediate next wave, but surely a wave after that, is that where you connect, essentially blockchains are databases, right? Distributed databases. How do you connect data so that it can flow not just freely, but securely and in a way that can be usable for business between different borders? Because that's where the segregation is now, right? You can see what's happening with the SEC in the US. They're trying to clamp down. Even, you brought up PFPs, right? The SEC a couple of days ago said, hey, now we're going to look at like Yuga Labs, Bored Apes. Maybe that's not just a picture. There's more than that. So we definitely think regulators and motivated governments will catch up faster than the ones, obviously, who are more passive. So one way of getting ahead of the opportunity is trying to make sure that the pipes to be able to move data securely and in ways that governments appreciate and will recognize and honor has to be done. So China is the first country in the world to have done this, where they have a national level infrastructure for blockchain, right? And we're not talking about cryptos or like speculative tokens and all that. We're talking about just movement of data, right, across different value chains. So what MyG did that eventually became Ztrix was negotiate exclusivity to be able to pass data in and out of China. And in that regard, MyG was very, very fortunate. They were not the only suitors, but they were very fortunate because the Chinese government made an active policy decision that Chinese data on their blockchain will always ever remain onshore, at least for the foreseeable future. So now this opens up the other part of the puzzle where how do you then handle data that leaves China and goes into China? So essentially what we're hoping to be able to realize with Mimos is essentially not trying to build apps or dApps for the government. It's trying to make sure that, whatever it is, whether it's supply chain financing, supply chain management, where national data or national-based data moves out of the country and into another country, that can be done securely. So that may apply to some blockchain projects, maybe not all, probably not all, right? But for some who are looking at more industrial use cases, traceability, I think if Andy brought up just now, like they're doing traceability. So these are part of the pipes that you may need. Yes. We don't have an active vision to build all of the dApps. We want to make sure that the pipes are there, the infrastructure is there. But in doing so, you have to probably trial with a few applications in the first generation.
Yeah, I think
maybe a bit, just 1-2 minutes. Agree with Dato' Faz. Before you want to enter into the blockchain, for example, right? Most of the enterprises, they don't understand. In fact, also from the government is as well. If your data is still, I can say that Web 1.0, right? Most of the data also manually. So when you want to jump to the blockchain, it's quite difficult. So why we need that some sort of like blockchain certification, for example, for the starting point. And second thing, from our perspective, we need support from the government to ensure that they understand blockchain very well. They adopt it from the government, then into the private sector. For example, chronology of the blockchain scene history in Malaysia actually started by MDEC. MDEC invited Vitalik Buterin, a small-scale event, 2017. I was there. I met Vitalik. I asked him what we need to do to promote your Ethereum. He said that go to universities. But dia pun drop off from university actually, Vitalik that time. And I start to do some development. So something on the tax also. Country like Estonia and country like Dubai already have a metaverse policy. So we need to have a clear. Thailand also already have a metaverse policy, very clear in terms of adoption into the government. So community need to support by that. Crypto Valley Switzerland, actually it's the first crypto valley in the world. They established in 2016. They have 10 unicorns from Crypto Valley Switzerland. They have 20 billion worth industry from their crypto valley. And our crypto village is the second in the world. 2018 we established, but we are not focusing on the crypto. We're focusing on the cryptographic tech, security, data forensic, and hopefully, please pray for us in Crypto Value Malaysia Association to spur the knowledge, to spur the awareness into the industry and also private public sector.
I
Thank
think I totally agree. I think what's also very important is the applications. So we talked earlier, I think, about NFTs, and we talked about NFTs being a way to show, I call it ego trip sometimes. I have a Rolex watch, I've got this NFT, right? But then I think when you look at businesses and brands, and you know, we deal with KFC, Unilever, P&G, they're among our clients, and they'll ask, fine, that's well and fine, there's a lot of hype, and since now the hype is gone, we don't even want to touch it. Because they don't really see the application, they don't really see the use case. I think that's what's most important today. If you look at NFT, there are many applications. Bought it your club, you can say, yeah, fine, buy an NFT for 100,000. But why do people buy an NFT for $100,000? It's really because of the other people that have bought that NFT. It's people like Mark Cuban who have bought the NFT. You want to communicate with Mark Cuban, you buy that, bought it your club, you go into the metaverse, the outer side, and you get to talk to them, right? So people buy it for community management, to meet other people. So that's one application. The second application really is, for example, loyalty and merchandising. Brands always want to create loyalty among their consumers. And of course, Web3 enables brands to engage in a very open manner, with their community, and to create loyalty with their community. And the third, of course, is brand activation. There's so many different brand activations that you can do with the metaverse. And today is really the early days. I always say that Decentraland and Sandbox is the Friendster of social networking. Facebook isn't there yet.
But I'm actually curious, following up with the infrastructure question, right? Do we have the tech infrastructure? What are the tech infrastructures needed, right, to develop this, right? So we've got a layer 1 right now, right? I know Matthew's been working on the scanners, but do we have sufficient for developers to build on? Yeah. What are your thoughts, Matthew?
So infrastructure for tech, or Web3.
Yeah, Web3.
It's actually not much different. Again, depending on where you're coming in from, right? So you can go really, really deep, the core level, or if you don't go really very deep, you go onto the app level. So on the app level, actually look at what it is, right? It's not a lot different from Web 2. You're still building, interfacing with what we call API, REST calls and stuff like that. So it's actually quite similar. I would say in terms of infrastructure and...
What about like the cloud? I mean, there's decentralized cloud and there's centralized cloud, right?
Actually, the clouds are all centralized. The clouds are running on Azure, Google Cloud, right? So it is actually centralized, right? So it's a packaged cloud. I would say, okay, again, going back to that centralization, it's not binary, right? It's not 0 or 1, right? So there's a level of centralization. So it's obviously lesser centralized, but it is to a certain extent centralized.
But you know, the fact that in a decentralized system, some parts are centralized services doesn't automatically negate the entire system from, like Matthew said, having a high degree of decentralization. It depends how you measure it, right? Like MX Global, we're definitely a centralized exchange, but there are pros and cons to this approach. It doesn't mean that a Bitcoin in MX is no longer a decentralized Bitcoin compared to when it's on the open network. So I think it's not a black and white kind of area.
Honestly, infra for the government perspective, government need to develop some sort like 5G, 6G. If not, will be a lot of glitch, bugs, And second things, when you talk about infra from the blockchain perspective, Web3 perspective, you need to have more validators. You need to have more miners, not the mining machine for Bitcoin. Something like we need to have more Etoscan can be established, for example.
Basically, the tooling layer. Is the tooling layer ready?
I would say not in tooling. Maybe from it's probably maybe more guidelines if we're talking from the government perspective. So like the ones recently being done, I think IRB came out with their guideline of crypto. So if you know a lot of crypto folks in Malaysia, right, their main concern, right, is taxation, right. So that guideline was extremely helpful. So that really helps. I think obviously SE has the list of regulated exchanges, so we have folks here, right. So that really helps. So I think moving towards that direction, providing more clarity, large impact.
Okay. I'm going to ask one last question, I think, before a bunch of questions that we have from the audience itself. This is too short, but the time is too short. How would we position Malaysia? Right. The question is strategically or narratively, right? How will we angle and position Malaysia as a leader, right, in Web3 or the blockchain? Maybe start with Faz, better Faz.
Oh, I thought I was going to have the easiest time at the end. Yeah, to be honest, like I'm not fully decided like what I think the best recommendation would be, but two ways I would think about it, right? Like what have we been good at in the past in the general tech space, and the other is like what are Malaysians really doing in Web3 now? So number one, definitely we've been fairly good at BPO and all sorts of degrees of outsource, right? Like even in the content space, some of the best, biggest studios in the world work with gaming and animation studios in Malaysia. So maybe that's where we fit, right? And I think there's no shame in that. If you do a very good job, kind of as an ancillary or support service, then okay. I mean, maybe most of you don't know, but Binance's biggest tech support center is Malaysia. They're not Binance staff, but they use BPO services which are based in Malaysia. So that's where I think naturally what we already have as a tech ecosystem can lend itself into the Web3 space. The second is that we have a lot of kings of gamblers and cowboys in the Web3 space, right? So not everybody's a humble by the book kind of like build a very obvious, not to say obvious, but publicly visible thing.
We need to pay Matthew more, right?
Huge, like Matthew. So, but there are other guys who are secret whales, right? Yeah. So definitely, from a funding perspective, a crypto native funding perspective, Malaysians are very, very active. So that may also determine what kind of businesses we can inherently support in our ecosystem. Yeah.
We had one of the highest hash rates for Bitcoin at some point, remember? For a country that has pretty expensive electricity.
And we also are the top 5 actually, top 3 actually, the biggest mining machines in the world. People don't know about that, but they make it illegally. Yes.
I think if we look at the history of the internet and innovation in the internet, the year 2000, all the innovations started in the valley, if you remember, right? With the Yahoos of the world starting there. The year 2010, the innovation actually moved. The hub of innovation moved to China. When WeChat came about, it wasn't WeChat, it was actually QQ came about. Tencent started QQ, and that was kind of the hub of innovation for Web 2, was actually China. When it comes to Web 3, because China has, in a certain extent, clamped down on blockchain, we have an opportunity here in Southeast Asia to be that hub of innovation. So from Web 1 in the Valley, Web 2 in China, and Web 3, I believe, can be Southeast Asia. I think everything all the panelists said of why we can be the hub of, we are already the hub of Southeast Asia, and therefore Malaysia can be the hub of Web3 innovation in the world as the innovation happens in this part of the world or this region.
First, we need to believe to our country. Please show to the world that we are good, we are the best. For example, always when I give a speech overseas, people always ask me, what is different for us to invest in Singapore or in Malaysia? So we can say like this, Singapore is good on the fintech, for example, right? But we are also good on the supply chain, on the manufacturing. We also have a very good talent as well. People can speak English. Infra is better than Thailand, better than Indonesia, and we are same like Singapore. So what Singapore can do, we can do better actually. So I think we can show that kind of a uniqueness, that we have a complete ecosystem. We can be a hub of innovation. We have the best crypto exchange. MS Global will be the best. Soon we have Etherscan. Everything in the world they refer to Etherscan. If you want to do some sort of blockchain verification for the Ethereum.
You can take my job at MDEC.
Yeah, I really think MDEC should consider appointing Fendi as ambassador.
These people, they are legendary. Founder MLL, founder Nafnang, here. So promote the best of our country. Don't talk shit or talk bad about our country in the social media. Talk the best thing. And the latest information that Malaysia is the friendliest country in the world in terms of with an expat. Right? So promoting the best thing. Don't talk bad about our country. That's it.
Alright, Malaysia boleh.
Anything, Jensen?
I mean, I share the same view, right, as Dr. Fazli. I think two parts, right? One is you look at what we have, what's a natural right to win, right? And I think IP content is something that we have been helping the world to develop, right? Some of the top games out there, that I mean, some of you guys are gamers. Elden Ring, right? A lot of their assets were developed by Malaysian studios, right? I think the idea is then how can we, I mean, we have this rich content of IP, and we know that blockchain, one of the key value adds ownerships and IP, it's a very massive synergy there, right? So maybe that could be one of the key strategic plays, right? Around how can we drive, pure ownerships of IPs.
And we've got a lot of new Web3 IPs coming from Malaysia. Asians, if you guys heard of Nicole from Asian, GCC, all coming from Malaysia, all have raised a lot of money through selling NFTs.
Yep.
And that's...
and we are the first in the world define digital asset as a policy actually, compared to other countries. Policy under SC, digital asset, we are the first. We define Bitcoin, this kind of cryptos as a digital asset. So we need to proud on that, on the policy making. And of course, MDEC support very well. MDEC invited Vitalik to come to Malaysia 2017, earliest, part of the earliest in the Southeast Asian. Right?
Okay. So I'm going to ask some questions. Thanks, guys. I'm going to ask some questions from the audience. First one is, great panel lineup. What would be your advice to parents to get more young talent into the Web3 space? Is there immediate career opportunities now?
Play Roblox. Play Minecraft. No, really. My kids, I mean, they play those. Yeah. Then you have active experience of like how you start creating assets in game and everything. This is not really, in my view, it's not something where you go to school and learn chapter by chapter of how to do it, right? I think they need the hands-on, and typically if you have young children, these are the kind of games that probably immerse them closest to the builder type experience into a metaverse.
So I think the NFTs had a big impact on kids.
Yeah, people can see a picture of an ape, they can't see it.
Kids going online and putting like pixels together and able to sell it online, that was had a super big impact. I really my own kids, right?
Yeah, true.
But I think that said, we do need to kind of not create a mindset among our public that crypto and NFTs is all about speculation. It's not. It just so happened that when new technology comes up, people get all excited, and then when there's excitement, people see speculation, just like in the year 2000. But crypto, blockchain, NFTs is not about making money. It's about creating value, and that's what we need to make sure our public actually knows.
All right, I'm just going to ask one more question. Yep. So everyone says the metaverse is the future, but no one medium has taken off. Why is this? Maybe
just a minute. To create metaverse is very tough actually. You need to have 7 layers on infra, discovery, in terms of token economics. So every layers have different programming languages, expertise. So that's the things about. But the future of a metaverse will be, now the value of metaverse is around 20 billion USD, going to be 100 billions forecasting by 2025. This reported by Forbes. So we need to be involved, at least started with NFT first, then go for VR, and need to have a collaboration approach by industries and also government.
I would say you can go back and see why Facebook actually came in the year 2010. What was the biggest differentiation between 2008 or 2005 when Friendster started and when Facebook really started? Facebook actually became the most popular social network in Asia in 2010. And the reason why it became the most popular network in social media, because I bought Friendster about that time, is Facebook had an iPhone app, smartphone app, and Friendster didn't. And that's why Facebook really killed the hell out of Friendster in 2010. That was before I acquired the business, right? So actually what is really needed to grow the metaverse is actually devices. The devices we have today, the Oculus, for example, is just not ideal enough yet. Until the glasses came out, I'm told Apple is announcing something in January. Until devices that don't make you giddy, don't make you vomit after using it for 1 hour come out, metaverse will not proliferate.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's a latency issue, right? Yeah. That makes people giddy. But I think one more thing, that why metaverses today don't fly yet. I think from a gamer, right, effectively, or from any kind of environment you want to create, right, you need to have a hook. right? And a lot of times, you want to create worlds, your worlds need to have content as a hook, right? It could be a game, it could be some form of engagement, it could be some form of key celebrity there, right? But if your world is just a world, it's just a platform without any form of content hook, it's going to be an empty world. Right? I think that's the approach that a lot of people today are building the infra layers, right? Which is, to be honest, not wrong. You need it to happen first, right? But it takes time for content to actually come on, and when the content comes on, that's where you start seeing adoption. So I think it's more about time rather than whether it will work or not.
So you need the iPhones and the Zyngas of the world.
Yes.
Anybody else? Otherwise, we.
I think it's the. I agree. I think it's the devices. I have like 5 or 6 different Oculuses at home from different the
Generation.
DK2 and stuff like that. Right? It's just too heavy, too hot. Battery life too short. So I think once that is being addressed, right, with lighter devices, more portable devices, right, you should see that next wave. So basically, it's the issue of infra from the hardware side.
My personal opinion is I don't think the metaverse is going to happen like how we're talking about it today. I don't think it's going to be a portal that you access through a device or through a screen, and then you kind of live in this second world, right? I mean, we've had it before, Second Life.
Yeah.
Like lots of different iterations of that. Actually, I kind of agree with Ganesh. I think something like Apple glasses might be the one that changes the game. Personally, I believe like what we might in the future eventually settle on and call the metaverse is this augmented reality where you're actually in this room, but there are things in this room which exist on that plane or on that virtual layer that you interact with, and that might be, I mean, because that's such a much more superior user experience than hanging out in VR chat, right?
Yeah, it's cyberpunk, right? All right, I think that's all the time we have. It's a really great session. Wish we had more time. So I would like to thank once again the esteemed panelists that we have here today. Big experience, big dreams, and hopefully you get inspired by them again. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you once again to Mohan and our panelists Matthew, Jansen, Ganesh, Effendi, and Dato' Fazli. Now, Mohan, a little bird has come over and whispered to me in my ear that today might just be your birthday. So we would like to take this opportunity to wish you a very happy birthday.
Thank you. The parties with my kids. Thank you.
Thank you so much again, Mohan, for spending your precious birthday day with us. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your fantastic insights and input. That certainly clears up a lot about Web3 for me in general and hopefully for the members of our audience. Thank you so much, gentlemen. In the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, please do take note of the QR code that we have on Slido. Give us your feedback. I know you thought this was a great panel session, so please do let us know. Give us the feedback via survey on the QR code that is on the screen right now. In the meantime, let me just quickly summarize the notes that I've taken for this session. Web3 is the next evolution of the internet, the future, so to speak. It's the current Web 2.0, but with added functionality. But in Malaysia, it's early days yet. Real-world applications for Web3 being developed in Malaysia are fresh and capable of going global, leveraging off data sharing, blockchain, machine learning, AR and VR, mainly in the areas covering NFTs, gamification, and the metaverse. Web3 will give us the capabilities to decentralize community and database ownership, finance via cryptocurrencies, and data sharing in general. But Malaysia faces challenges of building sufficient talent. And the key here is experienced players needed through the public-private partnerships to develop and, most importantly, retain talent. So what else does Malaysia need to build a path ahead? Suggestions include a national level of infrastructure for blockchain like in China, taxation or metaverse policies like they have in Estonia, and more widespread tech infrastructure and ecosystem for our developers to build on. Are we ready? Maybe not quite yet, but in Web3, Malaysia is already the hub of ASEAN, and it definitely has the opportunity to be the global hub of innovation for Web3 once the devices stop making us feel dizzy, that is. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time we have for track 2 today. I hope you found these sessions informative and helpful as we head into day 2 tomorrow of Malaysia Digital Week. We'll see you in the same room tomorrow for some great discussions at 11 a.m. However, other panel sessions continue until 5:30 p.m. in Breakout Room 1 with Nazruddin Rahman. So please feel free to head there to learn more on issues pertaining to the tech sector. Till then, I'm Shani Iman Lee. Have a great evening and a safe drive home. All right, ladies and gentlemen, for those of us still in the hall, we still have some interesting sessions happening in Breakout Room 1. I believe the fireside chat with Dr. Sumitra Nair, charting the path towards becoming the digital hub of ASEAN is currently happening. So do head over to Breakout Room 1 to catch that if you can. Followed by another session called Sharing the Economy Development in Malaysia, moderated by Muhammad Rizwan Effendi, Director of Digital Adoption for Ecosystem Development. So 2 more great sessions happening in Breakout Room 1. Do join us for that if you can. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.